Okay, I'd like to take this time to acknowledge that we're meeting on the unceded lands in this great South Nation, Yamagura, Ginagay, Yuradu-Marang, we're Gomeroi, we're Gumbangri, we're Wiradjuri, we're Mudawari, and I'd like to pay my respects to, first and foremost, our land that provides all we need, food, shelter and clothing. In the 21st century, we've become greedmongers. And I'd like to acknowledge our ancestors. Their spirits still walk among us. And I'd like to acknowledge elders that may be present in the webinar with us. And I'd like to acknowledge all my fellow First People panelists and, of course, all my First People listeners out there on the webinar, and to all our other non-Aboriginal or not First Peoples brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining us. And I invite you to reflect on the land you're tuning in from in our great Southlands. Please acknowledge the unceded lands on which you are joining us from in the chat. Yamagura, Mitigar Garam Barak for anyone in Sydney. I'm a friend. I'm happy to see you. My name is Lily Shearer. I'm a proud citizen of the Murrawarra Republic, the first republic in Australia. And there are probably 8 or 9 other republics now joining us. I'm one of the co-founders and co-artistic directors of Muglam Performing Arts. Muglam Performing Arts is a First Peoples performing arts company co-located on Gadigal land in Sydney at Carriageworks and on Niimba country in Brewarrina, which has our regional arm. We're also a company in residence on Darug land at Blacktown with Blacktown Arts. We started our company, Dr. Lisa Marie Siren and myself and Fred Copperwaite, who has now moved on, to give ourselves a voice and our community of Redfern a voice at the time. We started with with a residency, and that's what our panel is about today, on country residencies. And I'll ask you, Claire, to switch your mic and your camera off, please, love. Thank you. And we started our company on the block. So for those who don't know, the block is is in Redfern and is the home to what I term the black capital of Australia. It's where we got our land rights. So we're still getting them, but we started out fighting for land rights. So that we have now medical centres all over Australia, Aboriginal medical services, we have Aboriginal children's services, we have Aboriginal legal services, all because of the fights in Redfern. And Redfern was the first urban area to have land, and it's called the block. So our first on-country residency was the block in Redfern, in the middle of the city. It was a performance promenade with multi-art forms. We took the audience of 3,000 each night around the block to experience traditional dance, circus, installation. We had the boxing gym going. We had hip hop in the basketball court. We had people in the terrace houses in windows looking down and telling stories. It was a fabulous project that we were involved in with Redfern Community Centre, and PACT, Emerging Theatre for Young People at Erskineville. So in 2010, which is the photographs you can see now, that was our presentation away from PACT. So PACT and Redfern Community Centre got the ball rolling, and then over the 6 years, stepped away. So by the third instalment of Gathering Ground, which was timelessness, history, past, present and future, then Muglam was leading it without PACT and in partnership with Redfern Community Centre. The next project I want to talk a little bit about is our Western Sydney project, Ingalawa Murray Tula, which in Darug language is together we share and enjoy. The three old people you see sitting on your screen on the right-hand side, is in the middle is Uncle Wes Mann, who is has been one of our elders in residence. A Bigambul man living in Mount Druitt, who was telling stories in his backyard. He was joined by his best friends, married couple, Darug woman and elder and internationally renowned artist Annie Edna Watson, and her husband, Uncle Ali Watson. And they wanted to take young people on camp to speak and learn about their country in their very own backyard of Western Sydney. So we went up to Glenbrook National Park, where Darug Custodian Aboriginal Corporation have land, and we camped up there with the young people. We had a nomination process. This was all led by the elders and myself, Alicia Torbert, non-Aboriginal woman, Maya Newell, beautiful film director, Jamie James, fabulous photographer whose work you're seeing on the slide, photographs, all worked with the elders to be their gophers, to organise everything for them. So this was empowering elders agency, and they wanted to take all these young people. The young people had to be nominated by their community. They had to, they could be nominated by school, parents, organisations. Then they had to have a interview with the elders, and we did two group interviews because we got so many applications. And then we did some training on first aid, bush first aid, how to erect a tent. And we ended up taking 12 young people to the Lower Blue Mountains at Glenbrook National Park in 2016. They walked country, they sang country, they danced country. It was a fabulous learning curve. You can see the crew under the caves up in Glenbrook. You can see the girls filling in the turtle with ochre. Darug people had scar trees for their deceased, so the men would carve the trees and the women would then fill them in with the ochre. Darug people have lost their designs for their scar tree, so now they use the long-necked turtle, which is their totem. And then the last slide, just photograph you see there, is the young people. We finished up at Blacktown Native Institution. Go back one, sorry, I'm still talking about that other slide. So we finished up on the Blacktown Native Institution site, where the young people and Uncle Wes walked in to be greeted by their parents, community, and other elders around there. We then built on that, next slide please. We then built on that to have a residency at Bundanon. And Jamie James, leading the photography, wanted to look at the layers. There's so many layers to our culture. There's so many layers to land and people. And we wanted to look at what those layers look like on country in Bundanon, on Yuin country playing around. We also engaged with elders from the Yuin Nation, the wonderful McLeod men that joined us, and a couple of young people from their area that they nominated to come along. We played around with images, we projected on the natural landscape, we explored stories, we feasted on seafood that was brought to Uncle Wes. Uncle Wes was also gifted with a massive possum float from the local community. It was really important for us to be led and engage with the local community, the Yuin people at Bundanon on the camp with us, keep us safe. We were visited by Danuch. Danuch is the owl in Yuin language, and that is one of their main totems. We then took the work that the young people and the elders did from Bundanon to the next slide. And that was Blacktown Native Institution. So working with Blacktown Arts, we were invited as a company to reclaim the sad place and the memories of the Blacktown Native Institute. For those of you who don't know, Blacktown Native Institution was the second institution in Australia. The first was set up in 1814 by Governor Macquarie, but the boys kept running away, so he couldn't keep them there. So he decided, let's move it to Blackstown. And it was called Blackstown back in those days because there was a lot of blackfellas there, naturally. And so he built another institution on a piece of land at the back of Rooty Hill called the Blacktown Native Institution, or the Blackstown Native Institution. Then later on, Blacktown changed its name to Blacktown. So the next slide, please. So we brought all the young people from the South Coast, Western Sydney together again to celebrate through dance, reclaiming the site, through every mission has a mission car, or, you know, we got a car, the kids decorated it, they took their slides, they selected photographs and had mini projectors and projected on humpies that was built by the young people. So the young people built their own humpies as screens. We had a big long-necked turtle that we all marched in through the neck, and of course the Mishkar was the tail. There was other artists there with us. Those beautiful flannel flowers in the back was done by the beautiful Sharon Egan from Western Australia, who worked with the local women's group at Mount Jewett to make to weave those flannel flowers. And we had dancers. We had 3 dance groups. We had Darug Woman Peter Strawn with Junaway Dance Clan. We had Darren Compton with his dance crew. And we also had Jo Clancy with her Wagonara dancers. So it was a fantastic celebration and a reclaiming of the trauma that our people went through during people call it the stolen generations. I much prefer Auntie Louise Corpus's term of the kidnapped generation, because often they were told the kids were going to the circus or to the movies and they never came home. So it's really important to work closely with community and make sure community's on board when you're doing on-country residencies. So that's a little bit about me and Moogahlum Performing Arts. I'm going to open it up to my panel now and introduce Alison Williams. G'day, Alison. They're on the unceded lands of the Gumbaynggirr Nation. The healing and clarity, sweet, my sister. The healing and clarity that comes from the preservation and translation of First Nations cultural expressions and voice is Alison's inspiration. Alison feels a deep responsibility to ensure that no more of our identity is lost, stolen, destroyed through ignorance and greed. Take it away, my sister. You two solid, man.
Ginagana Darwin. I'm Alison Williams and I'm coming to you from Gumbaynggirr country. I'm in the northern lowlands of Gumbaynggirr Nation, homelands to Milaghalgi clan, also homelands to Garbi elders, and I'm happy to say my home and the place where I work as well. So I am the creative director at Yarrawarrah Aboriginal Cultural Centre, and I started with Yarrawarrah many years ago as an artist on CDUP in the art shed. That was in 1994, and happy to have watched the centre evolve. It was initially created by our elders at the time who saw a great need not only to train our mob and train community to be able to get different jobs and strive for better lives, but to also to process and understand what was happening and to have a place where we could preserve culture and celebrate our identity as First Nations people and descendants of. So we have a range of activities that we have at our cultural centre. We've got brilliant infrastructure for residencies, so we house a lot of activity to do with residencies and culture. The first slide here is our annual Mother Spirit Women's Gathering. It happens once a year, although last year we had 2 of them. And it's a simple yet powerful gathering over a period of a weekend for all regional First Nations women who wish to attend. On site we have accommodation that sleeps up to 70 people, but obviously with COVID we have restrictions with numbers as well. But during this weekend we identify through ceremony and we identify that we have a great need to reinvigorate our cultural practice through the intention that we have to heal. Just recapping on what you were saying, Lily, about trauma, and it's an interesting word, trauma, because it comes in all manner of aspects of our lives where we may not even really identify it. But if you can imagine living as a race of people for centuries where we lived and were connected with our environment and we knew it intimately and we cared for it responsibly, and we came together in ceremony. We had many gatherings, and in these gatherings we had lots of avenues to settle disputes or to deal with business, trade items, but also we danced, we sang, we shared, and through all of that ceremony we shared a spiritual wellness. And it was often that connection with our country and that understanding of where we sat in the bigger schemes of things that connected us to each other. And all of that came to a fairly grinding halt. And suddenly we couldn't go onto our birthing sites. Suddenly we couldn't go and practice ceremony. Suddenly we weren't trading anymore and meeting and gathering on country because it was fenced off and we were told that we couldn't. And then we were sort of pushed as a race into small pockets of land to say, well, you know, you can be there, or we'll send you off to the mishes. And so there was a lot of adjustment and a lot of trauma around all of that change. And so at our gatherings for women, and we are a matriarchal society on the coast here, on the north coast of New South Wales, our leaders were women. And when we gather together on country, we reinvigorate ceremony. It's very important. We identify that ceremony is one of our biggest things to reclaim now, and with intention to reconnect to our cultural practices and reconnect to our country. And so we have elders and we have young women and we have lots of transfer of knowledge from our elders during that time. And we go through many different cultural practices like plant identification and harvesting for weaving. We'll visit specific sites, sometimes sacred sites, and go through what that place is about and what it means to us and what we should do, what are the protocols when we visit these places. So there's a lot of education that goes along with over a weekend, a short time, but we do it every year. There's a lot of arts that goes on here at Yarrawarrah. This picture here is from an arts residency that's in our conferencing facility and our accommodation. We have an Up Your Arts residency coming up in 2022, open to New South Wales artists. That basically we engage lots of regional artists who are prolific in their practices, and we get them to come and share their skills with other artists. And so basically it's a creative weekend. Oh, it's not a weekend, it's a 5-day, I think, residency. This residency here is in partnership with the Saltwater Freshwater Arts Alliance. We often work with them to deliver different programs because that we basically have the same objectives as far as revitalising cultural practice and giving voice to First Nations people and healing our mob. So it's coming up. Watch this space. It'll be on our website and through our socials when it's open for anyone to come along basically and immerse yourself. Again, we have site visits and we have different activity, cultural-based activity, but like this one here, which is Uncle Milton doing a bush tucker medicine tour. So the last one I have to tell you about is our residency that's coming up as well next year, which is the Girinda Guri. Girinda is Corindi, which is pipe clay, which is this place is named after pipe clay. And we have a cabin that we're currently refurbishing. It's due to be finished at the end of this month, that artists can come and stay in for a week, and it could be one entire week or it could be over a period of weekends, according to whatever their practice needs. They have access to a fully equipped pottery studio. They have access to a workshop space. They have also set up to deliver workshops as well. And so basically it's just designed for us to empower artists and support their professional practices. So that is going to be an expression of interest application, which also will be on our website, that any artist can put in an interest to come and stay for a week and use the facilities, have access to our cultural collection, have access also to the sites that our cultural collection come from. We have knowledge holders here that can take them as well out on country and give them plenty of support to develop their work and the narratives within it. So that's basically it. And now I'm going to introduce Lorraine. So Yama Lorraine, she's on the unceded lands of Gomeroi country. Lorraine believes that to listen and hear are the greatest gifts an elder can bestow. And through the work that Lorraine does on country and with community, Lorraine has been gifted the knowledge of story and oral history. So this is what inspires her.
Thank you so much, Alison and Lily. I'd first like to begin by acknowledging country, the country that I'm on here today, Gomeroi country, and our elders and those that have come before us that give us the strength and resilience to carry on and do what we do today. As Alison said, I'm Lorraine Fishenden, and I'm the Managing Director of a community development company we started calling ourselves back in 2014. And we do a lot of work in project and event management, predominantly in the arts, as well as a lot of other things. The name Two Rivers is a very special name to us, and we gave the business that name because it was founded our head office was originally founded between the culturally significant Severn and McIntyre rivers up at Ashford. These rivers have long provided a reliable source of food, shelter, water for our community, and they've also got significant cultural, social, economic and environmental, but particularly spiritual powers, allowing us to connect to our past while we embrace our future. I'm really honoured to be here today and to be surrounded by such amazing talent and knowledge holders that are in the room, so thank you. This first slide that we're going to talk about today was from a project that we've been working on for a number of years, and that project was called Cultivating Creative Communities. Cultivating Creative Communities was funded through Create New South Wales. I think it was back in 2020 we started it. And it was really about connection to the arts and building the capacity of our regional and remote communities. So we worked over a footprint of Outback Arts area and Arts Northwest area and developed a series of 52 creative workshops and some exhibitions at the end of that. This included tours of artists who would hit the road to go out to communities that don't always have access to the arts and really building some strong capacity out there. We were lucky that we were able to work a lot with Arts Northwest and Outback Arts, which allows us to do what we love to do. So this residency here was a music intensive residency, and you might recognise a few of the faces on there. One of our facilitators that week was Uncle Buddy Knox, who's always amazing to work with and does a lot of mentoring for our youth, and the beautiful Lauren Ryan, who some people know as an artist as Boo Ryan. They pulled together an amazing few days for these young artists to come together at Trelawney Station. For those that don't know, Trelawney Station is owned by the Tamworth Local Aboriginal Land Council and has a full compound there, so it's ideally set up for us to use. Nate Wetherill from Mad Proper Deadly also came and joined us, and the youth went through everything from how to write songs, how to put music to songs, and then how to record and how to develop beats for songs. And I don't know the technical terms because music's their side of it, not mine. So, there's a lot we could talk about, but as this is about residencies on country, I feel that this is really important to showcase. We've been working for probably 7 years, a little bit longer, in the music space around regional New South Wales, and I have to say that this was by far the best talent that I have ever seen. What came out of it was phenomenal. The guys from Castlereagh Connections at Canamble, through to young Kyla Bell coming from Moree, everybody in that room were really dedicated to what they did, and so were their families that supported them to come. It lasted a few days, and then the plan was that at the end of it we would be able to have a concert for them to show what they'd learnt throughout that week. But of course COVID put a stop to that when we couldn't have more than a certain amount of people in the rooms. I have to say that the same as everybody else in the arts, COVID has hurt us dramatically. Where you'd usually plan an event or plan a residency once and then deliver it, I think we're planning 5 or 6 times and just hoping for the best. And you hold your breath right up till the morning to say, are we still open and going to be able to run today? So developing COVID safe plans has been really important to enable our communities to travel and get together. If we can go to the next slide, please, Tam. The next slide that we have was part of our YINAR project. So this was a partnership project in partnership with Arts Northwest, and this was the first of 2 residencies that we held. YINAR is a project that is a creative exploration of Aboriginal women's practices from our region, and it has been a really beautiful project. It came to us through the aspirations of the Aboriginal community, the Aboriginal women in our region who come to us and said, there's a lot of men's stuff go on, but there's never anything for the women. So could we do a project specifically for women? And this was what they wanted to do. So it's been 3 years in the making so far, and it started with researching 5 key topics, and those 5 key topics have evolved over time because through consultation before and then during the first stages, some of the communities said, well, we'd rather know about this and we don't want to know about that, and we don't want to share this but we want to share that. So we look at Gali, which is water. We've looked at food and medicine, kinship and responsibility, healing, and then language is what has formed it. The first of the residencies was held in just out of town with here on the Liverpool Plains at the Art Shack. So the Art Shack is an Aboriginal-owned creative space and where you can have residencies. It also holds a significant women's site, which made it really good for us and really allowed us to walk barefoot on country and really connect to country. We were really blessed to have Ani Bronwyn-Spirim come and talk to us about the 5 key topics and really go in depth on a lot of those. And we also have Ani Liza Duncan, who is our lead elder on the project. For us, as a relatively young company, we really put a lot of value into having lead elders on all the projects that we do, and it's something that we've embedded now and brought into every project that we have a lead elder that's there to guide us, because our team are a mix of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, but we're not traditional knowledge holders. But so like having that lead elder there to guide us through is really important. The artist that we've got there is on the left we have Raquel Clark, who's an amazing YINAR from Moree, and she started as our curator on the program. Adele Chapman-Burgess, we've got Tess Reading, we've got Avril Chapman, and we've got Vicky Duncan, and then Tanya Hardigan, who owns the Art Shack. So they're the artists that were involved in the project, and they've really been challenged through mentoring and through the people that are on the selection panel to get them into YINAR to really explore their work, and this has really, really been beneficial. So Tanya particularly has been able to develop new products that she's created on country by using natural resources, things like paper and inks and colours that are all not only inspired by country but sourced by country in a way that preserves not only culture but preserves the plants that are there, which is really important. And then the third slide that we've got, this is in the Outback Arts region. So through Cultivating Creative Communities, it also included a series of professional development programs. And this one was taken at the Creative Arts Centre in Coonamble. The workshop was on cultural tourism, and we've all seen that there is a massive influx of tourism within New South Wales, and cultural tourism is a really important part of that. And it's a shame, I noticed Jamie Lee from Outback Arts has actually lost her connection, but they were instrumental in pulling together 7 communities that week, and Lily was able to join us in Burke, and I think we just sat there and yarned instead of doing the workshop that day. But it's really great to see what they're developing and delivering out there, and how we as arts workers in regional areas can support them to be able to deliver that, to create some economic and social independence for these communities, and how we can build on that. Cultivating Creative Communities will wrap up this year. We'll finish the last of the exhibitions with that, but for us as a small team to deliver 52 creative workshops in a 12-month period that's now stretched out to 2 years thanks to COVID has been really instrumental for our team and for the artists that we've worked with. A project like that, we don't go and deliver the creative workshops. We actually employ and engage artists from over the regions to go out and deliver that. So we've had Adele and Avril deliver, we've had Buddy go out and deliver, we had Lauren go out and deliver. And I believe that's really important, that even though as a company we get the money in a grant, that we actually feed that out to communities, because at the end of the day, that's what puts food on people's tables, is being able to employ artists. Particularly after a time like COVID, when they couldn't go and do shows and they couldn't get out to do big exhibitions, we could still run capped workshops, so there was still an income coming in. It's really great what we do, and we feel really blessed to be able to work with the people that we work with over the period of time. And we have a variety of different projects on the go at any one time. The work that we do is not just in the arts, it's all over different sectors, but it's just predominantly in the arts, which is what we love about it. I guess for looking at how we got into it and where we started from, we started when Jane Crease gave me a chance to work as an Aboriginal Arts Officer for Arts Northwest, and from that you went on to Carolyn Downer and also with Jamie Lee at Outback Arts, who have really supported us to grow and develop into a company. We knew that money in the arts was, I don't think any of us are going to get rich from it. Anyway, we certainly haven't. But the idea and the concept was that we could build a small business and go out and deliver, and that's created economic development for the 7 families that we feed through our employment and stuff like that. So we're pretty proud of what we've done and the partnerships that we have created. So I would next like to introduce Beth Thornburr. Yiridu Marang Beth on the unceded lands of the Wiradjuri Nation, Bungambra Watha, colonially known as Albury, New South Wales. I will confess that I did ring Beth today and check the language and the pronunciation. So Beth, I hope I've got it right.
Thanks so much, Lorraine. Yiridu Marang. Good day, hello. You and Nadi Beth. My name's Beth. My bones come from the lands of my ancestors, the Wiradjuri people. And so I say Mandangulu to my elders and to thank them for welcoming me here in this country. I'm a First Nations artist and curator. Been making art predominantly, I guess, within the painting and sculptural field for the last 6 years, pretty much straight out of high school. And I've also been working as a First Nations curator for the past 4 years. I got my first gig in the arts, I guess, working at Murray Arts, so the regional arts development org for our region. So I started there as the first curator for their gallery space, which was originally being cared for by the Aboriginal Arts Officer. So a similar role to the one that Lorraine was talking about earlier. I guess writers are really great because a lot of them actually do work hard at finding funding for identified positions. That's how I got my first job in the arts. I was working as a nurse's assistant before that. So it is interesting how our female leaders find their way into working with community and actually holding these roles within institutions and organisations. So I'm really grateful to have got my start there. And then from Burridge Gallery, which was the only First Nations gallery in our region, and we worked specifically with local mob, so artists that connected to the region. And I was there for 2.5 years before I started at our regional gallery, Mama in Albury, or Bungambra Watha. I guess mainly I'll be speaking today as an artist, taking up residencies. This first image you're looking at is a beautiful picture I took of Lake Kudjalagong in Wiradjuri country this year. Guess I use the term residency loosely because it was very much a self-directed camping trip with my nan and my aunties. And sometimes I think that's the best residency that can be had, don't always have the infrastructure or the support of an org to take up residency. So sometimes it has to be really self-driven. And that's exactly what this past residency was for me. This is a beautiful photo that my nan and my auntie just sat along the lake for so long when it was so calm and still, and the sky perfectly mirrored the lake there. Lake Kardulagong is a really sacred, special place for Wiradjuri mob. I just noticed the layers of freshwater middens the last trip I was there. Nan pointed them out to me. It took her some time to show me, but I think sometimes the older you get, the more you start to learn these things, and I guess the more deserving you get of these little bits of knowledge that we're very fortunate to have passed down sometimes. So yeah, I generally, before I start a body of work or an exhibition, I like to go back to country and take up my own residence for a few weeks. And it's pretty much just what I said. It's a camping trip where I talk to my elders before I go. I make sure I catch up with them while I'm there, and they come along with me as well, as we do a lot of drawing and weaving and making clay even from some of the ochre pits out there. So that was my most recent residency this year, which I undertook for a few weeks. Next slide. Thanks, Tim. Wiradjuri Nurrumbungu exhibition at Murray Art Museum, Albury. This was the first residency I was ever involved in. I started this residency maybe 2 days after I finished my last HSC exam. My nan found it in the Border Mail paper and said, "Oh, you should try out for this and apply." So I did, and it was I guess it was kind of what kicked me off and really connected me to my local First Nations artist community. I've been, hadn't really known about it much, or hadn't made much of it, hadn't had the opportunity to meet others, and so this residency was led by the incredible Arnie Lorraine Connolly Northey, and so it took place on country in Albury, and it was a month-long residency that we had a house for, basically. We had 6 other local Aboriginal women. None of us had ever worked with metal before or sculpturally, really. And Arnie Lorraine kind of led us through using these types of materials, and I guess really thinking about how our work is then placed in a cultural institution such as Mama, and what it means for us to actually reimagine these spaces and take up ownership of spaces that traditionally have either stolen from First Nations people or not allowed us in the doors at all. So this was really special for me to be involved in this really young. I learned so much from Arnie Lorraine there, and I'm very privileged and fortunate that I found a mentor in her, and I have been able to continue such a great relationship with her since kind of starting the work that I do. And I guess what was great about this residency as well was that it really connected all the women to each other, to Arnie Lorraine as well, who we've been able to continue kind of to touch base with and get advice with, but also to our regional gallery. And it can be really difficult for the local mob or mob in general to connect to these spaces or to feel like it's a space for them. But with this residency that was facilitated by the museum, it really set the right standard in welcoming mob in and telling them, actually, yes, these places are for us, and this is where we tell our stories. Maybe next slide, Tim. Yeah, this is a dilly bag made from a really short weaving workshop by Arnie Glennis Briggs that we were so fortunate for her to teach at the most recent residency. I was very happy to be a part of. It wasn't specifically for mob, but it was for local artists, and it was facilitated by Murray Arts again. It was at a time, I think, when artists are always struggling, but it was at a time specifically kind of at the peak of COVID, and we were able to safely when out of lockdown, able to actually gather and be given a space, be paid to make work, and with kind of really zero expectation of what had to come out of it. And I think that's also really important for artists, for artists of all backgrounds, but also for Aboriginal artists to kind of give them the space and the means to make work without it being dependent on a specific outcome. And so that's when actually the best work's created, I find, and the best stories are shared, and it kind of makes way for really great yarning and connection with each other. So that was the most recent residency. Very small scale, pretty grassroots. It was just like this old farmhouse, very close to country for me. It was easy to get to, and it was just over 4 days. We had a place to stay, we had food, and we basically were able to kind of pack our cars with the materials we needed. And very fortunate to have Annie Glennis gather some reeds with her to create and dye baskets. So that was really special, and that was the most recent residency that I've been on. I guess over the past 6 years making my own work and then working with community and artists, I think I have, I guess, really learnt the value of being given and taking hold of residencies ourselves. It's always where my work starts before I create work. It's always generally from a residency period or an extended stint, because often we don't have the privilege to just continuously make work in our studios every single day. So being given a residency where you get to spend multiple days just kind of within your own space and making work is really beneficial for our practices. Thank you so much. I will throw it back to Lily, Yama Lily, who has mentioned that she's coming to us from the unceded lands of the Wiradjuri people. Lily has very kindly shared with us what inspires her, and she said that she loves place and people, the respectful relationships formed that are always about responsibility, exchange, and I've got to make sure I get this right, reciprocity, that is relevant to place and peoples. And Lily's practice of creating land-based art with communities is what inspires her, as the untold stories are the first stories of this place and the people who share their knowledge. Thanks, Lily.
Oh, too deadly, you women. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Alison. I couldn't help but reflect, Alison, on Yarrawarrah Cultural Centre and Create New South Wales, formerly Arts New South Wales, had education programs. And we were up there, I think it was 2008, 2009, and there was high school students from the Central Coast to the Gold Coast, and they all did drama in high school, which is where I met Thomas E.S. Kelly, and we were doing drama workshops up there. And I wasn't sure if Stephen's, Lujan's question was to you. Any facilities or space to set up for music recording? Stephen, was that at Yarrawarrah Cultural Centre, or was it to Lorraine? Please clarify. So that was really great. I love to, Lorraine, and you might, sorry, Alison, you might talk a bit more about it, is the matriarchal societies that we, well, I can't talk outside New South Wales because that's not my thing, but I'm very much connected to a lot of our crew around, even the ones that go over the borders of Victoria and Queensland, because we didn't have those borders, guys. They're 1901 borders. I want to talk a little bit more about Yina matriarchs. You're going out in the country on residencies, Beth, with women from your family. Why is that so important to you ladies? What's the significance of that to you all? Any order?
I'll go first if you like. So for us, I guess, acknowledging just the amount of cultural practices that we had lost and the amount of knowledge that we'd lost. And we knew where our sacred sites were. We knew the locations of birthing places and things like that that have been passed down in our oral history. But we didn't know the songs to sing when we went to specific places. There were big voids in our knowledge, which then affected how we connected to country and how we connected to each other. So I think we had a couple of small gatherings of women and everyone expressed that need. Everyone said, you know, we were artists and we created work, but there was just such big voids, and it was like putting a jigsaw puzzle together but missing all of these pieces. And so it was really just to meet the needs of our women, and we extended even into self-care and self-nurturing and the things that we don't give back to ourselves, because we're often the ones that are giving to our families and working and just putting out so much energy. And so it sort of represents a time when we come together that we give back to ourselves as well.
It's very important to give back, isn't it? Which reminds me of a conversation I was having with some of the women in Bree recently. So Bree, for those who don't know, is short for Bawarrina, God's country, or Bayami's country in the world. We were talking about how the archaeologists and anthropologists that, you know, particularly in our area, it was all the, mental blank now. Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. They were all mostly men. And so they recorded all the men's stuff because men talked to men. They disregarded the women, but it was actually the women who carry the stories in their dilly bag. That's, you know, we not only gathered food, but, you know, Mother Earth gives birth. Women give birth. Mother Earth sustains us. Hello, it's a woman. So this patriarchal stuff really gets on your nerves a bit, doesn't it? And it does take away those jigsaw puzzles. Anyone else? Lorraine, you want to talk about Yuna a bit more, or?
I think for me personally, I'd done about 4 years of oral history with elders. We've done a series of projects where we've collected a lot of oral history from both Aboriginal men and women, not just elders, but also knowledge holders, and in one case, just Aboriginal people that made up a community. So to go out and hear those stories, and you hear snippets when you're doing oral history, I might only get 90 minutes with someone to record, you know, their whole life. So then to go out with some really strong cultural knowledge holders that were women, and to be able to delve deeply into that in a safe and secure place is really, really important, not only for my own cultural identity, but for everybody that was there. And the stuff that we learnt around creative practice, but also creative practice that is inspired by traditional practices. You walked away. The second residency, which was an art making residency, was even more special. And what I've found through these residencies is that it's not during the curated sessions through the day where you have a program and a timetable that the bulk of that knowledge is shared. It's at night around the fire when you're sitting there. And unfortunately, at the first residency, I couldn't stay. I had to come home, and I really missed having that. But the second residency, to be able to make Johnny cakes with Aunt Liza and then cook and then eat together and break bread and do that is so vital, not only to connection, and identity, but to us as women to give us strength and resilience and power. The connection that you get working with these artists and these elders is something that's then unbreakable, and so important and vital to me. So it's so multifaceted and multi-layered that I couldn't pinpoint the most important thing. It's the whole process of it and the building of the relationships and how you nurture that into the future. But particularly when we were at the Art Shack, to be able to go to that site and look at that site and hear about that site and be inspired by that to create works. And I'm not an artist in the Yinar project, but I'm the project manager for that, yet I've come back and used that inspiration to create new works myself. So it's been a great year.
Oh, it's so important, isn't it, to reconnect on country and to share. And I mean, elder is a bit of a loaded term. English language is a bit loaded, isn't it? So, you know, I grew up knowing that an elder isn't a senior. An elder and senior are two different people. Seniors are old people. An elder can be young, because as long as you have cultural knowledge and you're sharing that cultural knowledge, not keeping it all wrapped up to yourself and, oh, it's all private. That's not how we work. It's really important to share that knowledge. And yeah, I think I was 26 when I sat on Dulai Wirrawa, so Dulai male, Wirrawa women, Elders Council in Mount Druitt. I'm mostly note-taking or picking elders up and dropping them off, but there was only two of us there, one, Jamie Eastwood and myself, and he just sort of went, ooh, okay, why is this happening? And then, you know, if only you have hindsight. And I loved your residencies of Lorraine, of building community capacity, you know, with legends, you know, Uncle Buddy, Lauren, what's his name, the young fella with the music crew. Oh my gosh, he had his crew at Eora. Nate. Oh, he's doing some fantastic job. Yeah. And seeing all those
I think that we're really, we're so lucky here. We have such amazing music, and it's all throughout the state, but we're in the Mecca here for it, if we be realistic about it. And to have Uncle Buddy and to have Uncle Roger and, you know, all these people that people will think, oh, you could never approach them, but they are the most generous and giving people that you ring them. And, you know, we had Sorry Business last year and they would ring us and check on us and our family. And it was, they're just so great. And my mum's actually just must have lost service because she's just dropped off the chat, but Buddy loves to come in and he says to Mum, how you going, old girl? He calls her old girl. So it's these connections that you build throughout the generations that, you know, encourage people to learn more about culture and to ask more questions and feel free about that, whether they are First Nations or whether they're not. They are feeling inspired to do that. And the work that Nate is doing is phenomenal, from a kid that started with Silver City Songlines to where he is now, and what he and Alex are doing it's phenomenal. They're really great.
Yeah, and you know, Mr. Priestley too. He's been a big influence in Nate's life there, my old brother. He's I've got some mental blanks today. Sorry, I've been travelling a lot. Yeah, it is really important. We Moogahlin does a festival back in Bree since 2015. Bayami, our creator, Nunu, our fish traps, oldest human-made structure in the world, home to 8 nations. And Uncle Roger and Uncle Buddy were like, Brother Buddy were like, waiting patiently. When are we going to get asked? And as soon as I, you know, said, oh, you want a headline this year? Yeah, we've been waiting. And, you know, to have them there when the river was dry in 2019, no water running through, yet I knew they would draw people, old friends, colleagues, Tamworth's the mecca of country music. I wouldn't say it's the mecca of all of our music.
We are diverse. We just focus on the country.
The grandfather of Aboriginal hip hop is ours in Sydney, and he's off in Imbriwarrina. We've broken those relationships through our residency programs, and they go off and do things on their own. So grandfather of Aboriginal hip hop in Australia is none other than the beautiful Monkey Muck, Mark Ross, aka Monkey Muck. He's done some fabulous work around the communities. And Beth, your family residencies, camping. That's how it starts, isn't it? That's how it starts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, if we waited for someone to organise a residency for us all the time, we'd never go, would we? And it would never happen. While Alison, your facilities there sound amazing, and it must be such a beautiful place for artists to come together and have a space that they can easily work at, and actually it's not such a challenge. But I'd love something like that around here. But sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'm here on the river. But yeah, sometimes that is the residency. It's camping on the river, or it's camping out bush. And you're still totally inspired by the stories that the landscape holds, and I think that's what the residency is all about, isn't it? It's just looking around and listening. Sometimes, like I was saying, it needs to be totally self-driven, and just invite the people that are important to you on the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you say, I just want to clarify, Beth, was that a month's residency you said you had? 1 month?
Yeah, it was. So that first residency was 1 month. The house we were staying at was actually infested with bats, so most of the women actually ate it. And we would just travel back and forth. But it was a month, which was amazing, because there's so much time then to really think about the content behind your work and why you're making this work, and also it gives time when you're bringing 6 women that have never met each other really to kind of come together and to actually make those relationships, which after a month they kind of they do tend to last, which is really nice, and I'm fortunate for that. But yeah, a month was great.
Which brings us is a nice segue into the First Peoples cultural intellectual property. There's always lots of questions around our intellectual and cultural property rights. A lot of people think they can just come along and do what they like. What would you say to people, not First Peoples, who wanted to come and be on land with you, or approach you actually? They want to do a project in your community. Ladies, here's a scenario. They want to do a project in your community. And they've got this funding. They're throwing it at you. How do you respond? Now, let's leave our mics off. Who cares about the background noise?
Alison, do you want me to go first?
Yeah,
this is a topic that come up, and we talked about it in some briefings. And I thought about it, and I thought the first thing I would ask is, what's their why? Why are they wanting to do it, and what do they want out of it? And maybe it's being skeptical, but it is just so rare now that people would come in and go, here's this money, just have it and do what you want with it, and we don't want anything for it. Is it they want to tick a box? Is it that they genuinely want to support the arts or support the community? You would really, to me, it would be to ask that question before I even referred them on to elders to talk to it in the introduction, would really have to know why they want to do it. What's their purpose? What did they want out of it? And why did they pick us to come to when there are, around our region, there are a number of places they can go, and why did they choose us? Before I would even refer them to an elder or a knowledge holder or an organisation, I would really want to have a really good understanding of why they are doing it. And I know of a situation where one regional arts board got asked for contact details in a town, but they wouldn't tell them what the project was or why they wanted it, and then wondered why they got knocked back and were told, no, you can't have the database. At the end of the day, we are still bound by privacy laws. So to just think that anyone can come in and throw money and then we'll give them a database or knowledge is just doesn't happen. And with ICIP and the rise of knowledge around ICIP, it's really come to the forefront in the last couple of years. And we as arts workers, and Beth, I know you're the same because we've done some stuff together with it. We are really building our knowledge bank on what is ICIP, how do we act appropriately, how do we protect our knowledge holders in our communities, and what needs to be in place to do that. And the first question to me is why? Why do you want to do it? And if they've got a genuine response, great.
Yes, right. Okay. Here's another one. I'm going to throw another one out. Come on, Bethany, this one's for you. As a migrant, I am interested to study past history, Australian colonial history. Why are you jumping on me? Am I allowed to mention history connected to First Nations? If I need permission and it is not geographically connected to, who should I seek permission?
Well, that's a big question. What was the first part again? Sorry, Lily.
They're a migrant. They want to study past history, the Australian colonial history. Well, let's have a yarn about this one. How can you talk about the Australian colonial history without talking about the IRA is my answer. Invasion, removal and assimilation. You know?
Yeah, no, I think you said it pretty straight there, Lily. You can't look at the history of this country and this continent without looking at what it's done to its first people. So I think that's probably the best place to start. And yeah, even when you do read about those policies of assimilation, removal, what the government has done to our people. Ask questions too, like not what you read is not necessarily the truth either, but ask questions about the impacts that history is having on Aboriginal communities now. What do you see is happening to Aboriginal people right now? That's a direct result of the history of this country and how we've been treated as a people. It's not so hidden anymore. Like we're living in a time now where people are finally starting to speak up about the trauma and the tragedy that has happened. So I would just say, yeah, definitely ask questions. Don't believe everything you read or see. And also, depending on what community you're living in or who you're connected to, ask local mob as well. Ask them how they would think about the history of this country. How's their mobs and their families been directly impacted by governmental policy and the white Australia?
And thanks, Beth. That's a great answer. And I want to add too that coming from living in Sydney for the last 3 decades, I've got a lot of migrant friends. And you've got to ask yourselves as migrants, how did you come into this land? It wasn't through the people of the land, it's through the government, a governing body. You've got to find the black people to get welcomed. That's one good thing about the real capital of Sydney, of Warrani, is Parramatta, Burramatagal. That's the real capital. And they used to do, well, I don't know if they still do because I haven't been part of it, but every citizenship ceremony, my dance group was involved in welcoming those new migrants. We'd break bread we'd talk about the history of Burramadagor, of Warrani, Sydney, the tall ships. But yeah, really, really, really important. And you can't, you do need permission in geographically. Everything's geographic in Australia. No, the second part of the question is if I need permission and is not geographically connected to who should I seek permission? Every land is geographically related to a nation. We haven't got those 1901 borders of lines on a map, cartology. We have land formations. The Great Dividing Range runs from Kakadu right through to Queensland. It's a border. It's a border for our people. You know, the rivers are borders. I've got another question. Oh, here we go. Anybody can answer, but Alison, you've got your mic on. Leave your mics on, girl. Don't worry about the back. If you are not First Nations Australian, how do you engage with the Australian landscape as an artist or designer through multiple lenses? Each of our relationships to the land is what makes for a unique narrative. But the pressure to have a First Nations perspective attached also can dilute the expression. How do we navigate this path and still it's authentic?
Well, your expression is your expression, and that's authentic to you. I don't know why there would be a pressure to have a First Nations perspective in your authentic expression so much, unless your work is specific to a sacred site or a special place where you have to get permissions or engage in consultations about what your intention is. I think anyone can feel connection to country. I don't think you have to be the First Peoples. I think you just have to sit with it and you have to pay attention. But I don't know that everyone has a pressure to have a First Nations perspective in their work, really. I guess it just depends on what the nature of the work is. It's a bit hard to answer it in a general context. I mean, if you were doing a collaborative piece with First Nations people, or if you were working with a group, I'm not sure, but I think if you want to look through a First Nations lens, then you really have to connect with the people as well and gain an understanding in that way. But yeah, I'm a little unsure about why there's such pressure to have that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you, and let's really cement the point too that we have secular sites that you can express without our dilution too, and then we have our sacred sites, which we would not do stories about your sacred sites. We respect your cemeteries, which are now our cemeteries too, but we don't desecrate white sites. We don't desecrate statues. All those statues that were desecrated in Sydney were done by not our people. They were done by not First Peoples. I think it's really important to state that. And you're with Four Deadly Women here, so we don't beat around the bush. We don't mix our words.
And Lily, what's
look.
heartbreaking is this is still happening. Literally in the last 10 days, Mile Creek. Like, who does that? Who in their right mind does that? And who has that much disrespect for any person or any culture or any history to damage and trash such an important place? And that's not just an important place for Aboriginal people. It's also an important place for reconciliation. It's where for the first time ever, the descendants come together and recognise what happened. And these people go out and they damage it, and it's not like it's even in the main street of town. They had to drive a considerable distance to do that.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Mm.
I also wonder if in that question, when they say through an Indigenous perspective, so First Nations perspective or Aboriginal perspective, I'd prefer to say, I wonder if they're wanting to incorporate either a cultural story or that's published there. They're wanting to actually paint a story, or what brings that into it? Because I feel that there has to be more of it, because I can look out my window and paint from one perspective, and my husband, who's an artist to an extent as well, who's not Aboriginal, he could look out there and paint it as well. And I wouldn't say to him he has to do it through the eyes of an Aboriginal person or a First Nations person. That's his own connection to this country that we're on. So, yes.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I have to mention the Creators Fish Traps by Amis Nunu again. You know, that's there's a whole destruction around that, and it's a government destruction with water. Water's become such a commodity. So that's what the festival is about. It's about recognising our sacred sites, such as the fish traps, as a gathering place that is being destroyed and damaged by our very own government. So, you know, with all the cotton, rice, almonds, you know, crops that take up all this water, send them over to Canada where they've got lots of water. You know,
and then to add insult to injury, they release Murray-Darling funding. And I don't know if anyone on here has looked at that, but the project plan alone, we're doing an application with an Aboriginal organisation. It's 45 pages just for their project plan. How is that accessible to community? And you can't sit here on one hand and say we want to give you money to fix the river system, but on the other hand say we're going to make it that complex that no one can apply for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've just been told to mention that we will go a little over time to 4:15. Yeah. No, I think it's really... Look, Moogahlin has always taken a stance that, one, we want to include the land as a character in all our work. And two, we try and stay away from the blood money. You know, we haven't taken any blood money yet that we know of. So blood money, people out there, is mining money, corporate greed money. Yeah, we try and stay away from that sort of money. We love philanthropics. We have great partnerships with philanthropics, but they're usually art families and really, really beautiful, generous, have great conversation families. So, yeah. Anyone want to say anything, or do you want another question? I have got a little thing I want to make sure that we do our little legacy before we go. What legacies are we building for our communities? But that's to wind up, so I'll do that about 10 past. Okay, here's a good one. What are some tips for creating meaningful residencies on country with limited resource? So we talked about that. Hello, sorry, no, I'm not going to repeat ourselves. We talked about just packing up and going out camping. You know, do it with a group. I know some of my friends came up to, some of my artist friends, not First Peoples, came up to Barmies Nunu Festival this year in Bree. They did their own thing. They, as well as the festival, they went out, they camped on the river, they created their own fun, they created their own art out there. Yeah.
Just clean up after yourselves.
Yeah,
Leave it better than how you found it.
yeah.
Yes, that's it, Beth. Leave it better than how you found it.
And tread lightly on country.
Yeah. Yeah. Country provides. You just have to be open and sit and listen. Okay, question. Could the panel speak to making music on country from a non-Indigenous perspective? Recording, creating new work on country, and how best to do this in the most respectful way for traditional owners, custodians and communities. Respectful and appropriate listening.
Can I start on this one, Lily?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for asking the question, but you are always on country. That's the reality. You are always on country no matter where you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think when I look at that question, I think straight away to, you know, that first festival in 2015, Monkey Monk came up to Bree. He met some of the musos. The relationship was brokered. Now the relationship's been built. They've just put out, and if someone from Create can put it in the chat from YouTube, they've just put out an EP, Songs of the Barwon. He came up this year, did workshops, broadcast Koori Radio live from the museum every day, the Cultural Museum. Yeah. Okay, as well as appropriate remuneration for, okay, they want, do you want to be remunerated? Well, find your own funding. And then come on.
No, I think they mean paying elders and communities, what I think they mean.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Sorry. Opposite. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Stephen. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely they need to be remunerated. You know, you wouldn't, if your toilet was broken, do you think you'd call the plumber without paying him? You know, it's the same as us with our culture and our knowledge and our experience. I've given away stuff. I know Uncle Max Dolman and Harrison says you've got to give it away to retain it, but that doesn't mean giving it away to not First Peoples all the time. He's talking about exchange. He's talking about reciprocity. You know, we traded without money for thousands and thousands of years in this country. So we know how to do that, and we do a pretty good job.
Lily, earlier this year we held an event, and there had been a song, and the song moves me incredibly. But it was interesting that when we had the writer come and speak to us, how the perspective, and particularly my perspective, changed on that song, not of what they were singing about, because it was incredibly important, but it was questions like those photos that you used. Did you have permissions to use those photos? Have you followed these protocols? Where did you get this from? And I assumed, and I incorrectly assumed, that they'd followed pretty good protocols with it, and then they hadn't. And I think then what happened was a song that I had right up here dropped to down here. And where I would go and say it's an incredibly moving song, I probably wouldn't highlight it now, because I know that there hasn't been those cultural protocols followed. And when they were asked tough questions, they couldn't answer that. And that's the thing, and when we're talking about invasion and stuff like that, if you're singing about some of these things that are deeply traumatic, then you have to make sure that is all covered in it, and that you've made sure you've taken all those steps to do that, and always pay your elders, always pay your knowledge holders.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like that song my friend Peter Garrett put out earlier, I think last year. that you're on. Welcome. He's singing "Welcome to Gadigal Land." How can you welcome someone to a land that you don't own? Oh, and you know, Peter's a good friend.
That was
But it was,
probably important learning, though, for them, don't you think? When they were asked all of those questions and held
absolutely.
accountable.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because not everyone just knows that information, and it's important that we speak up and make those questions known so people do learn from their mistakes.
Definitely. And I think now too that for anyone that is genuine, there is no excuse not to know, because you only have to reach out. I think I can say, like, Terry Jenke has developed some amazing resources on these subjects.
Yeah.
So for any person, any of these questions, you can go back through, and there are checklists and recommendations around film, music, anything, around ICIP, about paying artists and what to do. Like that, she's built some amazing resources there that you can adapt and really build your knowledge from.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Broken Glass is one of the case studies in her last book, a show we did for Sydney Festival 2018 in partnership with Blacktown, and it's about women's rituals of death and mourning from New South Wales, Victoria. Again, taking away those colonial borders. We've got a question from Newcastle, and I think this will be my last question that I'm taking, because I want to wind up with some legacy work. So the question, Newcastle, New South Wales has a vast community of theatre makers, but little to no First Nations artists or performers are represented. How do non-First Nations artists find First Nations artists to collaborate with on theatrical events? Oh my God, you've got the wonderful Adelaide Lewis living up in Newcastle. You've got NAISDA just down the road, National Aboriginal Islanders Skills Development Association Dance College. You've got, search. We've got all these search engines. Google's one. Safari's another. Search. You will find them. I think don't be lazy. I mean, we spent years in education learning this education system so we could to play the game, but we're not about to do the work for you. Sorry, too old for that. The young ones might, but I'm too old. Develop relationships. Yeah, sorry. Wallatuka, sorry. I can't even read today. Yeah, go Ray Cheatham. You go, sister. Wallatuka.
Can I add, Lily, that Ray works for the Two Rivers team? So go Ray.
Go Ray. And can I add that Ray's related to my ex-husband? No. Family? It's really important. Those relationships are really, really important. You've got a beautiful artist up there who's also a performing artist that I know as well. He also dances, it's language. But sometimes us fellas with the big mouths from out west, people go, oh, they're really angry. We're not angry. We just get a little bit frustrated, and it's our passion. So look up Camilla Boney. Camilla Boney is a great artist in Newcastle. Absolutely fabulous. Oh, Wabbical's up there too. Go. Everyone's helping me out here. The Newcastle Writers Centre used to have strong ties with our mob. Arts Upper Hunter, Wyong Art Centre. Wow, the list goes on. So I'm really conscious of time, ladies. It's been so wonderful to talk with you all. And thank you for you joining us, and thank you for your questions. One last, we just random go around. What are the legacies that you as an individual and you as your companies are leaving for our next 7 generations?
Oh. Will I go first?
You go for it.
Go for it. I think it's important for us to share that ideology of First Nations people, because really human beings have sort of lost their way. We're all growing with we have this sense of entitlement, and we think that we just own this planet and we can push it and shove it and abuse it because it serves us. We're here for a short time in our lifespan. It's just a blink of an eye in the evolution of this planet. And I think that our job is to pay attention and learn, grow from that, and love. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm moved by you, Sister Sunny. Thank you, my sister. We love you, Sister Native. Yeah. Sunny's just saying fantastic, sharing his tears. This has been such an amazing example of strong talk story. Really beautiful, really strong. Mwah. Thanks so much for this leadership. Yay, thanks, Sunny. Just a native. So what? You're only a young one, Beth. So what's your legacy? I know it's a big pressure we're putting on you, Lindsay.
I do feel a little bit young and inexperienced, but I guess within my own work as an artist, I want to make sure that the work I make is genuine, that it's gutsy, and that it honors my mum and my family and also my community. And that if I can give back in any way in the work that I make, that's all I would really want. And the same with the position I hold within a cultural institution. If I can assist in providing space for First Nations people to retell these stories and to reimagine these spaces and take ownership of them, if I can just play a little role in helping them to tell their story and their truth, then that's really all I want to do in the work that I'm sharing, and to continue having great conversations with women like yourselves. Thanks.
No worries. Thanks, Beth. Lorraine?
I actually wrote some notes because I knew I'd forget the question, but what I hope my legacy is access to knowledge, songlines and practices, and so that generations after me have this embedded in them at a young age, and they don't have to be like we were and going out searching for it. So I would really hope that my nieces and my nephews, and then when we have children, our grandchildren, they have this instilled in them at such a young age that it doesn't have to be hidden like it was for our grandparents and our great-grandparents, where they weren't allowed to talk about it. So I guess access to knowledge is my legacy. And as a company, social and economic independence for our communities. That's what we want to leave.
Absolutely. More cultural enterprises. Yes. Our own self-determined practices, our own individual sovereign rights. Absolutely. Some of the takeaways we've discussed as a group in preparing for today is we want you, the audience, to go away with an open mind, to be respectful, have those thought-provoking conversations with us. Continue. This is just, as Wesley Enoch would say, this is just the start of the conversation. This is just the beginning. We're around to have more conversations. Be willing to learn and share. You know, it is about reciprocity. It is, and you can make donations into any of our bank accounts whenever you like, Stephen. As long as there's no strings attached. Research the area you're visiting, of your local community, of you're going to work with. Make sure you know them. Make sure you go in with knowledge about the land. People, we love that. We love when people come in with knowledge. Knowing your objectives of, stop bouncing around, sorry. Of who you're going to work with and what you're doing on your residency. Connection with women on country, mentoring and nurturing one another is really important to us. We've said it quite a number of times in our panel today. It's really important to us as women. And looking after country while on country, leaving it in a better state than what you found it. Taking only what you need. You don't take what you want. I always tell my grandchildren, I've got 10 grandchildren, and I always tell them, no, you don't want that. Do you need it? Ask yourself, do you need it? Because, want's a very greedy word. And those are our final words. We want to thank you for listening to us and sharing with your comments and questions. You can search us all. Remember, the only silly question is the one you don't ask. And stay safe and tread lightly on country. Thank you, Alison, Beth, and Lorraine.
My pleasure. Daran.
Mandango, thank you.
Didgeridoo, thank you.